Have you heard the saying before that the truth will set you free? So, why hasn't it set you free yet from your anxiety and negative thoughts? That was the question I asked myself when I began this process, and the secrets I uncovered are exactly what the people in charge never wanted any of us to know or understand. I'm Bridget Hart, coach, business consultant, and blossoming mystic. I hope that you enjoy the content I'm about to bring you today, and don't forget to subscribe down below, like the video, and leave me a comment because this is all about interacting with you. So the truth will make you free. You know, our white American society was built on hiding and avoiding the truth of slavery and the fact that we enslaved human beings for the purposes of hoarding, building, generating wealth for ourselves, to the exclusion of everybody else, even the people that actually did the building. And we did that for 400 years. 400 years. How many generations of people happen in 400 years? And what do you think that 400 years of hiding and avoiding very apparent and very visible truths might do to a society? When we shrink all of that truth down into our daily life, you and me, the fact that we don't know how to celebrate the truth is chilling, but it also explains a whole lot about why we suffer so much anxiety and negative thinking. In the beginning of the process that became the Heart Habits, the 10 habit framework that I created that helps me lead a life that is aligned with love. One of the passages I came across was love celebrates truth. And I had to consider the meaning of that word celebrates. Like, what does it mean when we're celebrating something? What do we do? How do we behave? Especially in this society. When we want to celebrate something, we put it on a stage, we shine lights on it, we put up billboards, we fly planes overhead with banners flying out. The point is we make a big deal, we highlight all the good things, we take the time to notice and pay attention when we're celebrating something. So I had to ask myself, how do we do that with truth in our society? Do we celebrate truth in our society? And my very quick answer was no. We do not celebrate truth in this society. We celebrate things that feel good and maybe even some truths that we like, but ultimately we hide truths that we don't like. As a society, as a whole, that's what we do. And in the microcosms of our life, that's what we do as well. So what does it mean to celebrate truth? Does it mean you need to know exactly what the truth is, that you need to be the holder of the truth and then you'll be free? I say no, that's not at all what it means. Let's talk about what truth even is and what is true and what's not. When we talk about truth, I like to talk about two different types of truth, which is subjective truth and objective truth. I'll dive into objective truth first. So objective truth are truths that we would generally, as a group of people, as a society, we would generally agree on these things being true together. Usually these things are based on facts, data, evidence, statistics, things like numbers that we find to be hard, or science or things like that, right? We generally agree on these objective truths in our society. The sky is blue, the grass is green, etc. And then there's the subjective truths. Now, subjective truths are those truths that are subject to our personal interpretation. These are truths that must come through our reality, through our eyes, through our ears, through whatever, go into our brain, be processed by our brain, and then be received by, our heart, our soul, our spirit, whatever you want to call it, as true. It sounds super deep, but in fact, this is very simple stuff. And I've talked about it before when I've talked about like the reticular activating system, and when I've talked about how the brain can actually lie to us in order to keep us believing that our reality is what we expect our reality to be. If you don't believe me, watch the show Brain Games on National Geographic, and it will give you great fun examples of how our brains do this for us and why. It really does serve a great purpose and helps us to stay alive and to survive and thrive in this environment. And it can really benefit us. But especially if we know how to use it, it can benefit us even more. And if we don't know how to use it, it can actually be a detriment to us if we're not utilizing it for our best life. So those subjective truths are things come into my brain. I process them based on what my experiences are and what I know and what my knowledge is. Now I believe something to be true. A subjective truth might be, I think I'm a tall woman. I'm 5'8". Compared to many women, I am relatively tall. When I'm in a crowd full of women, I'm often one of the more tall women in the room. However, I might think I'm tall, and then I might be with someone, a girlfriend, a friend who is 6'7", and they might look at me and think, you are not tall, you are small. That would be true for both of us, right? It's true for me that I'm tall because in a room, I generally look over people's heads, over the women's heads. But then for that other individual who's much taller than me, I am obviously much smaller than them. I'm not that tall. And that's still totally true. So how can I be both tall and small? How can both of those things be true at the same time? And that's because of subjective truth, right? The truth has to come through my filter first. That truth had to go through the tall person's filter. No, I'm looking up at her right here. She's my tall friend. But that subjective truth has to go through her. It has to go through me. It's still true for both of us, right? Even though those two things conflict. Objective truth, we all agree on those things. It's generally based on facts, numbers, evidence, etc. Subjective truth are things that we know are based on my own feelings and my own acceptance of the truth. What we call this is the duality of truth. Okay, like if you want to dig into Google and dive deeper into this topic, you can definitely look up objective truth, look up subjective truth, look up the duality of truth. I like to call it, though, the plurality of truth, because when you really think about it, every truth has multiple points of view looking at it. It's not just my way and their way, right? It's not just subjective and objective. It's a lot of different type of perspectives looking at any given situation. We can use the Gospels as an easy example of this. We talk about this all the time in the church, about how you've got 4 different Gospels. They are the same story, but written by 4 different people at different times from different perspectives and ultimately with different end messages, right? So they tell different stories of the same story in different ways, right? And all of them are still true. They're just different based on the different perspectives of the people who are telling those truths. So what's the point in telling you about, oh, there's objective truth, there's subjective truth, and their truth could be opposite of your truth, and they're still both true even though they're opposite one another? Because love celebrates truth. When we can allow other people to hold their truth, and we can just choose to celebrate it, to be like, okay, that's their truth. So how can I shine a light on it, pay attention to it, highlight it, understand it, and make my decisions also with it in mind? You're free now. You get freedom from allowing them their truth. You don't have to change them. You don't have to change their mind. You are not here to persuade anyone to any other different point of view or different perspective. You are here only to experience your perspective and to enjoy it as best as possible, which gratitude does a good job of helping with, and to just serve your highest purpose, right? So their truth being different than yours is not a problem. And in fact, when you can look at it and celebrate it or pay attention to it, now you can make better informed decisions about how you're going to move forward in life, what you're going to do, what your boundaries are, what the spirit is telling you to do, what your shadow might want you to do or not do, and how your strengths can play into all of it together. If you might have noticed, I just mentioned the 4 components of the first heart habit, which is self. And I talked about those in 4 videos before. I'll add a link here, but truth is number 2 on the list for the heart habits, right? Number 1 is self. You've got to know who yourself is, and you've got to love yourself. You've got to embrace your subjective truths. You've got to embrace what you believe to be true. And you have to do that in order to embrace what other people believe as true as well. And when you get yourself to a place where you're really able to embrace that other people's truth is true for them and deserves to be celebrated simply because you want to live a life aligned with love, you'll be able to make really good decisions with how you're moving forward with people. And you'll find yourself feeling more open-minded, more enlightened, and more able to embrace all of the different truths, good, bad, and ugly, that exist in the connections and the spirit around you. As always, I'm so glad to have you here. If you got any interesting thoughts from this video, drop me a comment below. Leave me a like so I know you came by. Subscribe, hit the bell so I can let you know when I put out a new video every week. And I love you. I can't wait to talk to you again next week.